Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is investigative reporter Spencer Fernando. You can find his articles at SpencerFernando.com. Welcome back to the show, Spencer.
Good to be here.
Spencer, what are the national polls showing for the popularity of our major political leaders just months away from the national election in October?
Well, it shows that Trudeau is still pretty unpopular. It's about 32% this is the Angus Reid poll, 32% who approve of him, 61% who disapprove. His approval's down 1 point, so within the margin of error in the last few months in the Angus Reid poll, so not a big change. His disapproval is down a little bit too, from 64 to 61, so again within the margin of error. But yeah, generally most polls show him with about 2 to 1 disapproval to approval ratio.
What about the parties themselves, the Liberals versus Conservatives?
Well, it's interesting. It really depends what poll you look at, because the Angus Reid poll has the Conservatives leading by 38 to 30 over the Liberals. And then there was a Nanos poll, which tends to be more pro-Liberal, and that shows the Liberals leading 36 to 30. So you've got two different polls showing two very different things. What I try to do is look at the overall trends, and it looks like the polls have tightened somewhat in Ontario. The Conservatives still dominate in the West. Quebec, Liberals generally doing fairly well there compared to the Conservatives, but not nearly as much of a lead as they had in 2015. So it's definitely looking like it's going to be close in a lot of areas.
What seems to be the biggest factor in these polls?
Well, I think there's a few different things going on. The Liberals obviously took a big hit when they, with the SNC-Lavalin scandal, that really knocked their numbers down. I think what's happening now, though, is that as I predicted a while ago, I think the establishment media is starting to be more pro-liberal, more anti-conservative in their coverage. The social media restrictions, so the Conservatives are totally out-fundraise the Liberals, but they can't really use much of that money because there's now Google is banning political ads in Canada and Twitter is banning political ads in Canada. And that's because the Liberals, made all the threats and said, we can shut these networks down and all these things. So the Conservatives have more money but can't use it, and meanwhile the Liberals can go and campaign on the taxpayers' dime and do government announcements that are really obviously campaign announcements, and everything but name. And I think that's tightening the numbers in some cases.
Is Doug Ford turning out to be a liability for Andrew Scheer in Ontario?
Some polls have said that, but again, it's tough to tell because there's polls that show him. One poll had him at 20% popularity, which is obviously pretty terrible. But another poll had him at 36%, so keeping most of the support he had from the last election. So I don't know. I mean, he definitely had some scandals. The whole Patriots thing with Dean French, that definitely doesn't help. But I think it remains to be seen how big a liability he'll end up being. He also does have very committed supporters. I mean, Ford Nation is a very committed group of people who really support him. They get out to vote, and I think he, if he gets them out to vote for Scheer, that could be helpful. So we'll see. They're also taking a break, so he might not be in the news as much in the next 2 to 3 months as the election gets near. The Liberals are going to try to talk about him as much as they can, but it remains to be seen whether that'll work with people.
If Justin Trudeau is reelected, what kind of popularity will he have in Western Canada, and could it pose a threat to national unity?
Well, yeah, his popularity is very low here in Western Canada. And I think that it could be a very big national unity crisis. Already there's polls showing that above 50% of people in Alberta and Saskatchewan are at least open to considering separation. Many people saying they'd vote for a separatist party in the West. Lots of justified anger in Alberta. And I think one of the nightmare scenarios is if Trudeau gets in, he loses some states, gets a minority government, but then he's forced to govern, forms a coalition with, say, the Greens or the NDP, who then demand even more anti-Western Canadian energy policies. Well, then, it's going to be like his first term, except on steroids. So things are going to get even worse. So yeah, I think there's a real national unity, potential for a national unity crisis if he gets back in.
Is there an organization or organizations promoting Western Canadian separation?
There's a few groups on Twitter, like small accounts you'll see. Nothing that seems extremely organized or big at this point. But again, I think that could change quickly. If there's already the underlying, at least a certain level of underlying public support for separating, and people feel they're not being listened to, and people feel Western Canada is taken advantage of, and then Trudeau gets back in again, and keeps putting policies like C-48 and C-69 in place that hurt the industry, then, there could be a tipping point where something that's right now not too organized becomes very organized, and could be a real problem.
How are the NDP doing under Jagmeet Singh?
Pretty badly. Again, polls say different things, but the trend has been that the Greens are slowly inching up, challenging perhaps for third place. And he's really not resonating anywhere. He's not going to fundraisers. They're having trouble raising money. Their candidate recruitment is lagging behind many of the other parties. It just doesn't look good. He's just not resonating with people. You almost never see him in the news. So I don't know what he's doing. He's apparently not going to fundraisers. So not really sure what he's up to, but whatever it is, not going too well for him. It looks like they're going to lose almost all their seats in Quebec. I don't know how they're going to do in Ontario, but it doesn't look good for them there. He's taken extremely far left positions on energy, Canadian energy, so he's not going to do well in the West. So at some point you wonder, where's their support? What are they going to get? And Elizabeth May's getting a lot more attention, and she has higher favorability numbers than he does. So, yeah, not a good time to be the NDP right now.
How could he get traditional union support in Alberta and Saskatchewan, where the oil and gas industry is the biggest union employer?
Well, hypothetically, he could take a different position on Canadian energy, more of a old-fashioned NDP position, where they were supportive of it, often because, as you said, it created good union jobs. But it doesn't look like that's the direction he's going. He keeps doubling down on the kind of woke, political correct agenda, and that's not working well for him. And the problem is he's kind of getting beaten from all sides because, working class people in construction or pipeline industry, well, they're going to vote conservative in most cases because the conservatives support the industry. If you want kind of a far-left environmentalist thing, then you're going to vote for the Greens or even vote for Justin Trudeau. So it kind of leaves Jagmeet Singh without any base of support.
Is Elizabeth May and her Greens more of a viable alternative? We saw the Prince Edward Island election where they became the official opposition. Could that happen in Canada?
Well, I don't see them becoming the official opposition because the conservative base is extremely solid, and the Liberals generally, their support hasn't dipped below 25 in any polls recently, so I think you'd see either one of those parties is going to be first and second. Politics, you never know, it's unpredictable, but the conservative base is so solid that they're either going to be first or second, and something of such amazing magnitude would have to happen. Just unthinkable for the Liberals somehow to fall below the Greens immediately. In the long term, it could happen. You're seeing in Europe in some cases that the political spectrum is moving that way. Even in the U.S., the gap between the left and the right is getting bigger. So we could start to see that happen more in Canada. But I think more likely the Liberals will just keep moving farther to the left. They've already taken some pretty radical left positions, brought in some pretty radical left policies, so they might just move further and further to the left to prevent themselves from being taken over.
Yeah,
the Greens.
I was going to say, don't forget the radical left in the U.S. is proposing national health care, whereas even the Conservative Party in Canada would never get rid of it.
Yeah, it's a totally different political spectrum in Canada and the U.S. Certain things that we debate here, they don't debate, vice versa. But, I mean, you are seeing a bit of a crossover just in the rhetoric and the way people are talking, and because, here in Canada, we're so influenced by U.S. media. I mean, you look at the trending topics on Twitter in Canada, top Canadian trending topics, often U.S. politics at the top or near the top. So, there's definitely some influence from the U.S. happening here. But, I don't see the Liberals falling behind the Greens, at least in the upcoming election.
We'll have more with Spencer Fernando right after the break.
I'm Douglas Mason, CEO of Naturally Splendid, symbol NSP on the TSX Venture Exchange. Naturally Splendid is a biotechnology and consumer products company focused on the global cannabis and health markets. Naturally Splendid is expanding distribution in this rapidly growing market with products currently in Canada, the USA, South Korea, Germany, and Australia. To view our comprehensive company presentation and for more information, please visit our website at naturallysplendid.com.
Grand Portage Resources' Herbert Gold Project in southeast Alaska highlights increased gold resource, indicated and inferred, of 860,000 ounces, in excess of 10 grams per ton gold. Expansion drilling is planned on the Herbert Gold property for the summer of 2019. Grand Portage Resources trading symbols are GPG on the TSX Venture, GPTRF on the OTCQB, and GPB on Frankfurt. For more information, please visit our website, grandportage.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Spencer Fernando. Should Canadians be concerned that a Chinese scientist has been removed from a top-level Canadian virus research lab?
Yeah, it's pretty disturbing. I don't think the concern would be anything about like a virus getting released. I mean, she was a scientist who apparently actually did some good work on Ebola. So, I mean, all credit to her for that. But I think the concern is, and again, nothing proven, so I'm not going to make any allegations without proof. But the concern some people are bringing up, even the head of NATO, said there's a concern about foreign espionage. And, she was kicked out, had her security clearance revoked. Her husband was kicked out, had his clearance revoked. And then some Chinese students who she had brought with her were also kicked out. So, and staff were told not to talk to her. And it's an administrative issue, they said, or a possible privacy breach. So the concern is that there is proprietary information or important information held by the Canadian government, and perhaps someone was trying to give that information to China. And if that's the case, that is quite disturbing, because it would raise the question of, if there's people in the country who we think are helpful, and then it turns out they're actually working for China, then that would be quite a concern, especially considering how China keeps getting more and more aggressive towards it. So, hopefully that's not the case, but it's looking like it could be a foreign espionage issue.
Now, in China, they wouldn't hesitate to arrest a person in that situation. And do we have any more information on the third Canadian detained in China?
No, I haven't seen much more about that, except that it seems concurrent with an arrest, I guess, of some foreigners to China. On a drug issue, so that it could be related to that. We'll have to see whether that's the case or whether it's politically motivated. But the problem is in China, everything really is politically motivated due to the control the Communist Party has. So China keeps escalating against Canada. They don't get any tough response in return. And we see another Canadian kidnapped or arrested in this case, and then we see what's happening with the virology labs. So I think a lot of these things are perhaps connected in ways that many people wouldn't think of, because that might not be the way we do things here in Canada, but China, there's a lot more connections between the government and all these things. Rule of law doesn't exist the same way. I think people should be concerned by it.
China's coal production has hit record highs. Several experts in the area of climate change and just reducing pollution say the solution for China is more Canadian LNG, is it?
Well, I mean, if Chinese coal was displaced by Canadian LNG, it would certainly be good for the environment. But, it doesn't look like that's going to happen, especially because it looks like we're getting distance from China economically, which in the long run is probably a good thing, because the more we're reliant on China economically, the worse it is for us politically, and the worse we have to sacrifice our values. So I think distancing ourselves is good, but on the issue of the environment, any change that's done here in Canada has already been wiped out, many times over by China's increasing coal production, which, right now my pinned tweet on Twitter is a chart showing where emissions have come from in the world. Canada's a tiny little slice, and China, massive source, and their emissions are still going up. Biggest source of emissions in the world. So the idea that we're putting a carbon tax on Canadians or imposing regulations, I mean, it's just absurd because it does nothing. It all gets overwhelmed by anything China does, and it's just really Canadian politicians playing a game, pretending they're important, feeling like they're doing something, virtue signaling and all that, and it does absolutely nothing.
Andrew Scheer slammed Prime Minister Trudeau for saying or doing nothing about President Trump increasing the Buy America restrictions. What could Canada do?
Well, I mean, the time to have done something would have been signing getting the new NAFTA or whatever other countries want to call it, but the new NAFTA deal put together, making it a clear condition of Canada that any further restrictions, Buy America restrictions, would not be allowed. So again, and Trudeau talks a big game about how it's tough with the U.S. and they push for Canada's interests, but when they signed the agreement, they didn't get the steel tariffs removed. That happened later, steel and aluminum tariffs. And then they didn't get anything on Buy America, and now the U.S. is upping the Buy America restrictions. So I think it's a fair criticism that, Trudeau acts like he talks tough with the U.S., but seemingly negotiated nothing of benefit to Canada whatsoever.
We'll have more with Spencer Fernando right after the break.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Magnum Gold Corp, MGI and the TSX Venture Exchange. A 2015 drill program on the LH property intersected several high-grade gold intersections, including 11 meters of 20.66 grams per ton gold. Additional drill targets on the LH property have been identified by a 2018 drone airborne magnetic survey to further evaluate a pyrrhotite-enriched gold-bearing system. Please visit our website at magnumgoldcorp.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Spencer Fernando. Spencer, under the latest press freedom rankings, Canada has fallen from number 8 to number 18. Why?
Well, I mean, a lot of it is just, the fact that other countries change in the rankings, so other countries may have improved more. Canada may have stayed the same in some cases. So it's not that there's been a massive crackdown on press freedom in Canada. We're still pretty high up. But, I tweeted about that and wrote about it just to highlight the fact that under Stephen Harper, the media constantly said, Harper is so terrible, Harper is authoritarian, the Liberals said that all the time. But Canada was ranked higher on media freedom than we are under Trudeau now. So Trudeau, who promotes himself as the big defender of media freedom and the free press, our ranking is what. So again, probably not too much has changed. In fact, I think what we're seeing now is, and it wouldn't be in the current rankings because that was for the previous year. But this year we're seeing the government, threaten to shut down social media if they don't do what the government wants, and social media, Twitter and Google, putting bans on political advertising in place under pressure from the government. So when the media bail out, so I think that would contribute to an even worse ranking, but not showing up now. But just to show how the fact that, Harper was so maligned on dealing with the media, but we ranked higher on press freedom under him than we do under Trudeau. So again, Trudeau talks a big game about something, but the numbers don't back up what he says.
Didn't the Trudeau government try to ban some journalists from a media freedom conference?
Yeah, Sheila Gunn-Reid and Andrew Lawton were at a media freedom conference, and there was going to be press gaggle, or whatever you want to call it, with Chrystia Freeland, and her staffer came out and said, we've only got room for 5 people. Even the room was obviously big enough to hold everybody. So we only have room for 5 people, and just the 2 people conveniently not on the list were the 2 people who would be expected to ask the toughest questions of the Liberals. And, to the media's credit, you don't see it often, but the people from the establishment media said, no, we're not going to go in unless you let everybody in. And so they put the pressure on, and Freeland's office relented and included everybody. But just the fact that the media had to push for access at a media freedom conference, I think just goes to show how empty the Trudeau government's words are.
Where was this conference?
I think it was in the States. I'd have to take a look, but I'm pretty sure it was in the States.
Well, what came to press freedom under Stephen Harper, I was kicked out of a photo availability armed only with a camera because I might ask a question.
London, that's where it was,
London. And I also remember Harper told a cameraman he couldn't go to an Asian economic conference with his entourage because he dared ask a question, will we be doing this tomorrow? That was his question. And that is a case where the rest of the media said, we won't go unless that cameraman can go.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying Harper was perfect. He definitely wasn't. But I just think that the fact that the Liberals portray themselves as so much better and, we're better than Harper, we're much more open, the evidence shows they're not. So maybe they're better at selling their agenda and talking a good game about press freedom, but the facts show they aren't any better than Harper was.
Do you think Andrew Scheer would hold open houses like Trudeau has, where he takes questions from everybody?
I think so. I mean, Scheer's pretty quick on his feet. I mean, he's better than Trudeau in question period often. So I don't see any reason Scheer wouldn't do that. I do think, Trudeau talks about having open events, but yeah, they ask a few questions from critics, but most of the questions are softball questions, so I don't really know how open those things actually are. But yeah, I don't see any reason why Scheer wouldn't be able to do that. He's pretty good at speaking, so not necessarily that charismatic, but he's smart and he knows what to say, so I don't see a reason why he wouldn't want to do that.
A study done by Ross Kay from the wealthyhomeowner.ca finds that 5,000 foreign students at UBC, with no extra student housing being built, are perhaps responsible for Vancouverites not being able to find affordable rental or housing because of the pressure they put on local housing. And he said the same thing could be found probably at any university city in Canada. Do you think that's a fair analysis?
Well, I think so. You said foreign students?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, one of the issues is you have people who often come in with a lot of money, and the housing market gets driven up, and this is happening in cities where at the same time you have restrictions on how much new housing can be created. So you've got two problems. You've got not enough supply, increased demand, and then demand comes from people who have, in many cases, an incredible amount of money. And that doesn't even include the fact that you've got a lot of people, particularly from China, who don't even end up moving here, but they just buy property here. So, yeah, I mean, I've said for some time I think we need foreign home buying restrictions. New Zealand has brought things like that in. Almost a total ban on foreign home buyers actually in New Zealand. So I think we need to look at something similar here. We also need to lift the restrictions on the housing stock. Need to be building more housing, apartments. I mean, Canada is a pretty sparsely populated country, so the idea that we have a shortage of housing space is absurd. And it only exists because of politicians who I guess they want to fight sprawl or they're trying to artificially create density. But right now, Canada, where we've got so much space, we're not in a position like some European countries. We don't have to be more dense. We don't have to fight against sprawl at this point. We should be just creating more housing. And the problem is you have housing restrictions when we're also bringing in immense amounts of new people every year through the immigration system. So those two things are kind of tailor-made to create a big problem with people being able to find housing and afford it.
Spencer, thank you so much for chatting with us.
It's good talking to you.
My guest has been investigative reporter Spencer Fernando. You can find his articles at spencerfernando.com. If you have any questions for Spencer or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet, our YouTube channel, Talk Digital Network. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated.